So the Florida Project is, again, another film. I mean, there are children in Paddington. We just talked about the children there growing up. The Florida Project is a very, very different film, but it is a film about childhood. It's later from Sean Baker, who made Tangerine, which you remember is that absolutely brilliant film shot entirely on an iPhone 5, I think it was, although admittedly an iPhone 5 with a very, very snazzy prototype anamorphic lens to make it more than just an iPhone 5. So the film plays out over the summer break in Florida, as the title says, outside the boundaries of Walt Disney World. And the title references the name under which Walt Disney first envisaged what was going to be the community of the future and then blossomed into Walt Disney World. The community, however, of the subject of the film are the residents of the lesser motels in the area of Kissimmee, which are basically beyond the boundaries of the expensive and incredibly successful theme parks. But these are hotels that are more like projects in the sort of welfare housing state. They have names like the Magic Castle and the Futureland, and they're painted purple and they're painted yellow. But all that paint can't cover over the fact that many of the people who are living there are long-term residents who are in the red, who are essentially, there and struggling to make ends meet and struggling to pay the rent. It's an economic wasteland, but it's also, bizarrely enough, a kind of wonderland for the children who run wild around the film. The central character is a 6-year-old Moni, played by Brooklyn Kimberly Prince, whose mum, Hayley, Bria Vinate, I think is how you pronounce it, I may be wrong, she's struggling to make ends meet. She's out of a job and she's basically doing whatever she can to pay the rent. So she's hawking perfume to upmarket resort customers. She's stealing passes from wide-eyed tourists and more. Meanwhile, her daughter and her gang, 2-3 of them at a time, are running riot around the motel to the dismay of Bobby, who is the motel manager, played by Willem Dafoe. Here's a clip.
It's only second week of the summer and there's already been a dead fish in the pool.
We were doing an experiment. We were trying to get it back alive. That wasn't my idea.
And water balloons thrown at tourists.
They didn't tip us.
Are you serious?
No.
Oh my God, this is unacceptable. I failed as a mother, Moni. You've disgraced me.
Harley?
Yeah, Mom, you're disgraced.
And I'm going to talk to Ashley, by the way. When your friend puts you in charge of her kid, that kid becomes your responsibility. You ain't taking responsibility. And you got that one, too. She's from Futureland, right?
Oh, whatevs. You gotta relax, my man.
And that idea of responsibility and or the lack of it runs all the way through the film. Sean Baker has described the film as a modern-day version of Our Gang, kind of referring back to those Depression-era shorts. Essentially, economic realities were harsh, but the centre of it were these kids who were always little rascals, always getting into trouble, but you completely were on their side. And the films had vibrancy and energy that was completely sort of at odds with what was happening with the outside world. And to the kids in this film, this is a play park. It's a brilliantly captured play park. Alexis Zabe, who is the cinematographer, uses a mix of some digital footage, but also an awful lot of 35mm footage that gives a real softness and a real glow to these alien environments, the purple and yellow castle, the bright orange of Orange World, the huge, strange construction of a wizard over the Wizard souvenir stores. And as the children move around these areas, it is almost as if they're in outer space, as if they're moving through some kind of strange alien land. The film is seen almost exclusively from their point of view for all the sort of significant material. There's a lot of stuff about looking up from it. If you think from a child's eye point of view, you take the child's eye line. So you'll sometimes see adults, just from the waist down. And this is something, it's a technique that's been used before. I mean, if you think of Steven Spielberg in E.T. and talking about never breaking the line of Elliot, that you don't go above Elliot's point of view. So you see the child's eye view of the world. And it reminded me, in terms of its tenderness, of things like Lynn Ramsey's Ratcatcher or Clive Barnard's Selfish Giant. There's one sequence in which the kids run into these derelict, multicoloured buildings that had some of that strange beauty of Barry Jenkins' Moonlight. That again, these are streets that are plagued with, with poverty and problems, social problems. But there is also this kind of hyper-saturated, very tactile feel to them. You can feel the sunshine, you can feel the colours. And weirdly enough, these concrete landscapes are broken up by sudden outcrops of verdant fields with cows. And there's a wonderful moment in which they come across a tree and somebody says, it's my favourite tree because it's fallen, it's tipped over and it's still growing, which kind of becomes a sort of emblem of how her character is growing. There is also this sense that they're living east of Eden, that the fireworks that are going off in the resorts they can see, but they can see them from beyond the walls of the resorts. At one point, a tourist turns up who thinks they've booked into the Magic Kingdom and have accidentally booked into the Magic Castle and are not pleased to be there. And the film never soft pedals on the harsh reality or the economic reality that these families are living under. But one of the things that Sean Baker is an incredibly sort of humanist director in the tradition of the Dardennes or perhaps Ken Loach, is he absolutely inhabits the environments of his films. You never get the sense that he's a tourist in these environments. You get the sense that he's right inside those environments. And what this film manages to do is to see the world through the eyes of the characters who are living in it. It uses a mixture of these, some street casting, they use some Instagram casting, they use an extensive audition process, all of which creates an ensemble cast that you completely believe in, and into which more seasoned performers like Caleb Landry-Jones or like Willem Dafoe fit really perfectly. So there's no sort of jarring between those two things. And the film has real sadness, and it has real heartbreak, and it has real poignancy, and it also has joy. It begins with celebration and, celebrate good times. Come on, which seems to be an ironic thing, particularly since the use of the title, the Florida Project, is an ironic use of that Disney utopian community of the future idea. It's a film which is bursting with life. It's a film which has terrific kids' performances, which says a lot about the way the director has worked with the kids. It is superbly shot. It has heart and soul to spare. There are things in it that'll make you laugh, things in it that'll make you cry. It's been called this year's Moonlight by some people, and I can see why. It's really good.